Hi there, welcome to another edition of the Book Review Blog. Today we're going to review the Stephen King book on writing. This is the closest book that you'll ever get to a Stephen King autobiography. I think he's mentioned before that he would never do an autobiography, but here is a pretty darn close one to that. Um, so basically, this book is kind of developed into two, or split into two parts, or two very big parts. It's, first of all, it is, again, like I said, as close as to an autobiography as he can do, where he, um, he talks about early life and talks about life with his living with his mother and his older brother. Obviously, he did have a father but his father abandoned the family when Stephen was 2, so he has really no recollection of his father, and that's kind of the short of that. So, but because his mother had to, rear 2 boys on her own, the family moved around a lot. They moved from, they stayed in Maine quite a bit, moving from, town to town. And then they got as far west as Indiana and Wisconsin. So, they really didn't get any further west, into like the West Coast or, like the Great Plains. But regardless, they didn't spend their whole life in Maine. So, but, despite not having a father and despite, his mother working a lot, he had a very happy childhood. And, his life was filled with relatives constantly. And he spent, his life in books and things like that. And he talks about when he went on to high school, and that's when he kind of started to write. Well, he started writing when he was in elementary school, and of course, they never really got like published in magazines or anything. But like he would type them out, and his audience would be like his mother, and like he would charge people. It was kind of cute. Like he'd charge them like a nickel a piece, and things like that, and they would gladly pay it. So it was a really cute idea. And so anyway, in high school and college is where he started to submit things into magazines. And sometimes, like more often than not, with most writers, he would get rejection letters. So, but still, he kept pressing on, and he did get some money, from magazines and things like that. Only maybe like $100 or $200, but enough that where he thought, okay, I still want to do this. So one of the best things that happened to him in college is that's where he's met his wife, Tabitha, and they studied they worked as a work study program, at the library, and I believe they had other classes together. They didn't really say what she majored in, though, but anyway, he majored in English and graduated with not only an English degree, but with a teaching certificate. So he was able to eventually get a teaching job in English. It's kind of funny. Before that, if you've heard of the musical Avenue Q, there's a song that's called "What Do You Do with a BA in English?" Because it's not exactly a useless degree or a worthless degree, but there's so much you can do with it, and that you're not able to make up your mind, or but it kind of, Stephen King kind of felt the same way. So I have this degree, and originally he wasn't going to go into teaching, but I think his mother convinced him to do that just in case his writing didn't pan out as well, or yet, or whatever. So anyway, so like after marriage, or after college, he and Tabitha got married. They had 2 kids right away, and they were living normal paycheck to paycheck families. They both worked. Obviously, I think both worked like 2 jobs, and yet still were able to raise their 2 kids. And then in 1974, he had originally written a novel for Carrie, but he had disclosed it, or he had thrown it away because he was like, I had this idea, but it's not really coming together. And his wife pulled it out and said, no, continue with this. So he continued, and it was bought by a publisher and went on to be paperback, which was the big money. Because I mean, I don't know much about the world of publishing or writing books at all, so I don't know, what type of stuff it gets. I think when originally they sold they sold Carrie, originally when it was like on hardcover, let's say, I think it was like $2,500 or so, and they were all happy because they're like, hey, that's money, we can do all sorts of things with it. But when Carrie went to paperback, he got, the total of it was $400,000, and with the contract that he signed, he got half of that. He got $200,000. So I mean, that was way big, much bigger than, of course, this little dinky $2,500, which is no laughing matter. But I take $200,000, So anyway, so then he talks about his alcoholism and his drug abuse, and then he started writing this on-writing book in about 1997, and then he had a cataclysmic thing happen to him. Obviously, if you remember, in June of 1999, he was almost killed by a car accident where somebody struck him and nearly killed him. So that's in there, where he talks about, the effects of that. I won't get too much into it because I want you to read the book, like I said. But, and that's where, he talks about that, obviously, but then that's kind of where that part of the autobiography ends. And he says that, that's where the book ends, with the autobiography part of it. And he says in the book, he's like, okay, if you just want this part, then go ahead and you don't need to read anymore. But if you're a serious reader and writer and want to learn more of the craft, please go on. And, I'm not going to be a writer, I don't think, but still, I'm a fan of his, so I read on. And the rest of the book has to do with the craft of writing. And so he talks about how to develop a story and what he does and what he gets ideas from other writers. And, you have to build characters, you have to, come up with an idea, obviously, first. And a lot of this was kind of funny, a lot of his are like, well, what if this happened? Or, what if such and such happened? For example, the one that just popped into my head was, when he was coming up with his idea for his novella of The Mist, he was in a grocery store, and he thought, for some reason, what if a pterodactyl just kind of flew around in the grocery store, that type of thing. And that's kind of way his mind works. And he said you can, ideas come in all shapes and sizes and at all times of the day. So that's it with that. But, and again, if this is a good book, again, if you want to get to know him more from his own perspective about his life and why he does what he does, and, but also if you want to get insights from a successful writer, then I would recommend reading this book too. So anyway, that's it. The next book that I'm going to read by Stephen King is called Dreamcatcher, and I bid you all farewell and happy reading.